let's start it. I want to talk about the brand new feature of the Ignite, the system views. So almost all users of the RDBMS, the regular database systems, know about some system views that provide information about database internals, and this kind of information can be used in the some debugging, issue resolving, and other monitoring of the database. So for now, Ignite also has this feature, and you can use it. And I show you a brief overview of the existing views and what kind of information can we gather with this system views. Okay, let's start. Let's start a couple of Ignite nodes with some configuration. Yes, one and another. So I turn up the persistent mode, so we should activate cluster before further action with it. So okay, and we are ready. This is the SQL console. So let's take a look what system views we have. Okay, so we have a special views that names views that provide information about all the views we have. So here is a list of existing views. So you can see that there are many of it, and they provide many information and many kind of information about cluster. So we have
Nikolay, if I can ask you.
Yeah.
Okay. I still see the terminal. Yeah, am I right?
Yeah. Oh, no. So yeah, this is not expected. Can you see the SQL console?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, okay. And here is a list of the existing views. So we can many of it. So the empty cluster, we can view what caches has the empty cluster. So okay, let's query it, and this is the cache from my demo, and this is the system cache from Ignite internals. And here is some kind of information about it. So so if you run this query on the production or dev cluster, you can see and study what caches do you have. Okay, so let's try something else. For example, we have a binary metadata view. Sorry, what here is it? And we can view what kind of information we store in the cache, the key value cache. So let's query. Oops. Yeah, it's in the sys schema. Okay. Yeah. So we can see that we have a simple model class with some fields, and this is the enable that will be shown in the demo. So okay, let's me show my IDE. Okay. So I have an example application here that creates cache that you seen before and start some compute jobs. So we can see the running compute jobs in the system view. So we just start this application and okay, I switch to the SQL and let's query the jobs view. Okay, so we can see that some jobs are running into the cluster. Okay, we have also SQL views that can show us what tables do we have, what columns do we have. So for now it's empty because we don't create any tables, and let's do it. So table one, and value varchar. Okay. Yeah, it succeed, and now we can see it. So we have a table and we have columns in it. Columns. I think I missed the name. Table columns. Okay. Yeah, now we can see it. And we can see also that Ignite creates two special fields for each SQL table. So, okay. And we have a very interesting view also that can show us SQL queries history. So we can query and watch which SQL queries was executed on the cluster in the past. Okay, so this feature is, I think this feature is very useful and you can use it. And please take in mind that the content of each view are also available by the GMX protocol. So we have a special GMX bin for each view that can provide you content of each view. Okay, and the last thing that I want to show you that you can also query the content of SQL view from command line tools. So, for example, we have a system view that name nodes. It reflects all nodes in the cluster. Let's query it. Okay, and we can see that we have two server nodes that we started earlier. Yes, and one application, one client node that was started by the demo application. And this is node ID, consistent ID, version, and other parameters. And the last thing, for example, we can view the what clients are connected to the cluster. So, sorry, okay, yeah. Well, this is a GBC client that connected to the cluster from the SQL console that I showed before, and we can see that we doesn't update protocol version in the source. So use this feature, and I think it helped you to increase the Ignite observability, and you can know what was hidden in the internal data structures of Ignite. So thank you, and let's continue with the questions.
Yeah, let's start with questions. You can please unmute yourself and ask if you have some. Sorry if I missed that. How can I actually start this GUI console? Is it available in Apache Ignite?
No, this is an external tool. This is a IDE from the JetBrains. It name data grid. So actually, any SQL console can be used. And if you doesn't have one, you can use command line tool or SQL line or just control slash as I shown. So you can query the content of the system view with very different ways. And I forget to mention that we have special system view exporter SPI, so you can add support of the some protocol to export system view content to the Ignite. So, for example, in my private repositories, I have exporters that exports system view content as a JSON via HTTP. So we have this feature also.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
Well, if I'm allowed to ask, Nikolay, you mentioned that it's possible to get some metrics via JMX, but I'd like to ask, is it possible to get something via HTTP, for instance?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, so if you speak about the metrics is another subsystem. It's different from the system views. So system views is a table, yeah, and the metric is a single value. Okay, so we have a metric framework, and I think I should talk about it in the other talk before, because there are many features of it, but it's very similar to the system views. So okay, to view content, to show system view content by the HTTP, you have to write your own exporter that will start some HTTP server and respond to the user queries. And for metrics, we have standard exporter that exports metrics in the Prometheus format. So
That's nice, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So please type us in the chat, guys. Do you use system views, or it was a new feature for you, new life hack? Do we have any other questions for Nick? And if not, let's move forward. Thank you, Nick. And I'll pass the word to Ivan, who will talk about communication via discovery in Apache Ignite. Ivan, please check if you can now share your screen.
I can, and I'm unmuted, so thank you. Let me close the door so there won't be too much background noises, I hope. Okay, let's start. My name is Ivan. I work at GridGain in, let me actually share it. Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Yes, thanks.
Cool. I work at GridGain, so I fix bugs and sometimes write some features in Apache Ignite. And this time I'd like to talk about the one that we call communication via discovery, or sometimes we refer to it as the inverse connections. You'll get what I mean pretty soon. So let's start with what do I mean by communication. Communication SPI, this SPI stands for Service Protocol Interface, is a part of Ignite that is responsible for nodes sending messages to each other. These messages are required to process transactions, compute jobs, some internal mechanisms like the finalization of node joining process or etc. It's a part of the systems that allow all nodes to communicate with any other nodes. And since the Ignite clusters have client nodes and server nodes, communication SPI actually doesn't care much about the type of node. It will allow server-to-server connection or client-to-client connection, anything that you want. And any node can create connection, initialize the opening of the connection to any other nodes. So what problems can we have with this approach? Client nodes sometimes can be rapidly enabled and disabled. They don't have to store data, and so you don't need to constantly have them. And the number of client nodes isn't fixed as well. So sometimes you can, you may want to have an ability to start clients in containers, in Docker containers, for example. And this approach has some problems. To be able to have, if we want to have the ability to connect to node, we have to know its IP address or just internet host address and port. Node itself has to publish this information to the cluster, and before it publishes the information, node has to retrieve its own IP address and port from somewhere. And if client node is in container, it just can't know its own external IP unless you hack it somehow. So that's an issue. Node will be unavailable in a way. And the one case that's even worse is when client nodes can't even open a socket to listen to. Like, for example, it happens in Microsoft Azure Functions service, and for some time we thought that it also happens in Amazon Lambda, but it doesn't actually, which was a surprise. So yeah, Node will just fail on the start in this environment, which is unfortunate. So what do we do with these situations? In older versions, we can do nothing. Our customers either configure their environments in a way that will work under these conditions, or we just don't provide any tools to help them. So basically, this means that you can't start container with a client node and expect everything to work flawlessly. So goal was to fix it. And the solution that was proposed and implemented was to have the new mode for communication SPI implementation, which is called Force Client to Server Connections flag. Basically, what it means is that servers are no longer capable of creating direct connections to client nodes because they might be inaccessible. And client node must connect to a server by itself somehow. The exact mechanics, I'll show it to you later. And the second option is for environments like Azure Functions. When you can't open sockets, well, now you have the option to tell the node that it should not open any socket. So you just configure local port to -1 explicitly. And default value will be the same as before. It's some generic port number. So -1 should be in configuration for it to work. That's the way to fix it. So how do you, let's imagine, for example, that server tries to open connection to the client node, and client node has that flag, force client to server connections. This means that server cannot directly just connect to a socket and so on. So the solution is to use some other protocol to send some very specific connection request to the client, and client will open that socket for us. Basically the only other communication protocol that we have in Ignite is called Discovery SPI. It is used to sustain the topology. It is used in node joining or failing procedure, in cluster activation, deactivation. All nodes are always connected in some way through Discovery. And basically, we have a guarantee that when you send a Discovery message, the node either gets it or the node is just dead. So this is like exactly what we need. On the picture on the right, we can see basically what I'm talking about, that when server is trying to connect to client, it will send through red lines the discovery message, and client will connect to a server through the blue arrow. What are good things about the solution? Well, first of all, the protocol is independent. There's always a connection between any two nodes. They are all accessible, but not with direct links. There's a level of interaction between them. And Discovery protocol doesn't require any open sockets on client nodes. Otherwise, it would be impossible to start in Azure Functions. Every client node only connects to servers by itself. Server cannot connect to client by Discovery, because you only connect by Discovery to a cluster, to a core of the cluster, which is the set of server nodes. That's all good things, but of course, not everything is so good. First of all, when you have to send the Discovery message to a client node, it will travel through a couple of nodes, or maybe more, depending on the size of your cluster. In worst case scenario, if you have a ring topology, default TCP Discovery SPI, it can travel the whole ring maybe twice until it actually is received by client node. So this might create some the connection will be a bit slower, but the good thing is that you don't need to open new connections constantly. You open it once and it will last for hours, or I don't know, days. Not sure actually. So it's not as good in that regard, but it is a robust solution that will basically guarantee that nothing will be broken. But there are other problems. First of all, there is a possibility in Ignite to create your own implementations of basically any SPI. And if you have your own implementation of communication SPI, then we just can't provide you the same settings. You have to implement your own solution for the same problem. But as far as I know, not too many people actually use their own implementations, because it's kind of hard to do. The thing that I already told you about, that connections might take more time to open. And you see the note at the end. The biggest problem actually right now is that when you have to open a connection, you do it in the same thread, and you're waiting until the connection is opened. It's not the most convenient way to send messages, and this will be addressed later. And number three, there is a chance of getting very specific deadlock with the new configurations, force client to server connections. So now I'm going to talk about that deadlock and how to avoid it, or at least what are the reasons why it can happen. If you see on the diagram, let's imagine that, sorry for that, server S is trying to send a message to client C, just as before. To do that, it has to send a discovery message to a client, but Discovery protocol has its limitation. So before sending a message directly from server to client, we must send that same message through red arrows to coordinator node. Usually it's the oldest node in topology, and only coordinator node can verify, so to speak, the message and send it again through the ring. But this time, all nodes will actually process it, not just resend it further. And the problem happens when basically you send the message and then you have to receive it and then resend to client. And only then the client can reply. What can happen if you are in some discovery process any receiving messages unless you process the current message that you have in your thread. It's not always true, but we can't always rely on the fact that it won't happen. So it can happen that we have to wait for the current processing to finish until we process the next one. And if in this case, we're just, we can't have a reply from client because we couldn't send it anything. So we'll just wait for a timeout to end up and we'll just end up with the error. Sadly, Ignite has one place with this set of conditions. It's in continuous queries when you have the query filter class, which is present in class path of client node, but not in server nodes. So when your server node registers that query, it will understand that it doesn't have this class, and it will try to load that class from client node through P2P deployment protocol. And this will result in a bad thing. But to be honest, you should not use, I believe, this scenario in any other case, because in regular cluster, this will slow down your cluster as well, because because we will have a discovery thread that will process IO messages and very long timeouts probably. This will slow down the whole cluster while creating that continuous query. It's not very good. Now, the issue with synchronous opening of connections. It actually is being worked on for quite a long time, I guess. You see by number that the issue is kind of old. It was suspended, but recently we started developing it again. And I don't know if the main developer of it is with us or not. Maybe he's. So,
yeah, as I can see, Igor is not with us today.
Yeah, that's a bad thing. He could answer something. But yeah, the fact is that when you open connection, you will wait. But once connection is opened, you won't send the message synchronously as well. You'll just put that message into a queue. So why would you need to wait for the connection? You don't need. So this will be fixed, and I hope really soon. So the fix with force client to server connections will be a bit better. You can already try it in Apache Ignite 2.9. I'm still not sure if it's released or not, so someone will help me and say.
Not yet, but we have Alex, who's release manager, so maybe he can give us a tip about the time.
Okay, so the main code base is in master branch, and 2.9 is for quite a few months right now. So you can download some nightly build or what and try it out. And in GridGain Community Edition, it is already released in 2 different versions. The later one has the settings of local port available, and the older one has the force client to server connections flag in TCP communication SPI settings. This is the way how you configure it if you want to try. And yeah, that's basically it. Do you have any questions? I hope you do. Thank you.
Yes, I have a question.
Of course.
We are using, we implemented the TCP discovery IP finder adapter and provide our own implementation that uses console, because in our use case, we use console to run our services, and we know how to find the specific services within console that have a specific tag, so we know who are the services. And it works pretty well. You know, when I say pretty, I mean that sometimes we know that we don't have all the a node is going down, and we want to re-trigger Ignite mechanism to fetch the addresses of the host. So we couldn't find a mechanism to re-ask or to reset the list of hosts that are in the cluster. Is there such a way to doing that?
I don't feel like I really understood the situation. So you have your cluster, like a set of nodes somewhere,
right?
And you need to change the.
Yeah,
does it have something to do with baseline topology or?
Yeah, let me try. So it's when the process starts, it invokes our implementation, and our code go to console. We get all the list of machines. Everything works, but the machine topology, sometimes a node, it's all in containers. Sometimes a node goes down, and usually console identifies itself by its own protocol, probably the one that you just mentioned or similar protocol. But sometimes it doesn't, and we wanted to know whether we, in the application layer, can trigger or can ask Ignite to check again what are to invoke again our implementation to ask for all the current nodes. Like basically, it's always Ignite asking us what are the nodes, and we answer everything okay. But sometimes in application, we understand that node is going down. We want to trigger Ignite, say, hey, Mr. Ignite, please revisit, recheck, re-ask. And
so you would like to trigger a node start from Ignite, right? If it failed for some reason.
Maybe a node rediscovery or something like that. Like at the beginning. At the beginning, it invoke our implementation for getting all hosts. We want to do it to have a trigger, applicative trigger, I would say.
It doesn't sound like something that we support, but I'd love to have help from other guys here if they have something to say.
Actually, it's impossible to trigger some rediscovery process because discovery is some continuation process. But you always could subscribe to not join, not left events, discovery events, and you will know about your current topology. And another way, more convenient, is just taking node list from Ignite cluster group interface.
Guys, sorry for interrupting, but you're discussing what to do or how to do, but for what? What's the reason you need to have this feature?
Guys, let me add some words. So, as far as my understanding goes, the question was if you need to refresh the IP address list a few times when you first assemble a cluster. So your IP finder needs to run a few times to get some positive result. In this case, to solve this practically, I recommend just setting very low timeouts for discovery and just trying to join the cluster a few times in a loop. So your node will try to go to IP finder. If the IP values are not correct, then it will fail and you will retry. in my opinion, this is the way to go. If I was understanding the question correctly, is that your IP finder sometimes doesn't return useful results when your cluster is just being started for the first time.
I think what we are trying to, sometimes like, because we ask Consul, our backend is Consul for discovery, we know which are the services that are currently available. And for example, what's happened if two nodes at the beginning, like in Bootstrap, two nodes are running and they don't identify themselves from some reason, then we'll create two clusters.
Well, the only thing which can help you here is maybe zookeeper discovery, because otherwise, yes, they will form two clusters, and unless you have there is actually a way so you can not return the current node address from the IP finder, and then it will not auto-discover itself, and it will not form a separate cluster. So you can have one node, only one node which has its own address as an address in its IP finder. In this case, only this one node can form a cluster which will start. The rest of nodes will wait for this node to come up. The key here is to only supply the address for this node. Only one node will get its own address as the IP finder results.
I understand. Okay, thank you very much.
You can also use the REST API to get your list of nodes and see.
Yes, but you need to have cluster up already, and the question is very, very early split brain by never forming any topology in the first place.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions about topology or discovery?
Or anything else?
Okay, so then let's move to our machine learning model. Thank you, Ivan.
Yeah, thank you.
Now I will try to give Ravil a bit more rights here. One moment. So please try if you can share your screen.
I can, and while I'm sharing my screen, let's think, why do we store our data? I mean, seriously, what to do if data does not fit our disk or our node or our cluster, whatever? It's a separate problem. But I think the first problem is what to do and why do we store our data? I think everybody recognizes this cylinder that appears probably in any schema. But when we think, we will discover that we don't keep our data just for data. We constantly do something. We want to run some analytics on our data. We want to run some computations, some queries, get some answers or some kind of that. Yes, when data does not fill one machine, we go to distribute way. Then we understand that we want to keep our code close to our data, and we try to reinvent MapReduce. Then we came up with some already known frameworks, and basically we sooner or later will end up like in this nice picture that I stole from Google Images stock. But in general, what my point is that we keep our data not only for keeping data, obviously, but do something, run some computations. And so actually, Ignite allows us to do that. And basically, we can run any algorithms across our data. And in this case, it doesn't matter if it's distributed or not, but if we talk about Ignite, it's obviously we are able to run some kind of our distributed calculations. And basically, if we can run any algorithms, it's the next intuitive and natural step. It's run machine learning in our data. So we have a lot of data. we can run it, we can run distributed algorithms, we get machine learning. And let's see what Ignite gives us. Because look, we have kind of a distributed data. So, but usually we don't want to run our machine learning algorithms on kind of raw data. We have to pre-process it, or we have to vectorize, we can fill the gaps or filter something, or probably not take everything but half of our data or some kind of that. Then when data is prepared, yes, we can train and we can get our model. Yes, obviously when we have a model, it's not the end of our process or of our pipeline, as you can recognize. Obviously we can validate, and we have to, and then we have to deploy our model to work. And then our model work, gives some answers, the accuracy is probably satisfies us, etc. But soon or late, we will get another chunk of data. And what shall we do in this case? Shall we just run our learning process from scratch, or we can do something else? At the end of my talk, we come back to this picture and we show how Ignite helps us. But before, let's see. I want to say that Ignite machine learning already has implemented a lot of popular machine learning algorithms. I'm not going to go through this list and explain each algorithm and why, what does it mean, why it can be used, and how it's implemented. I just want to show you the kind of list what we already have. And besides algorithm, we have a bunch of preprocessors, ensembles, something for model evaluation. But the main feature I'd like to highlight that we can build and we can write a pipeline inside our code. Yes, Java is kind of a very verbose language, and reading is probably not be very convenient. That's why I'll highlight only important part. So, as I mentioned before, we can just select which columns, for instance, we can use in our learning process. Then we can run a bunch of preprocessors one by one. Then we can decide which trainer to use. Will be, for instance, decision tree or linear regression or something else. And then we run fit and we get our model. Obviously, we want to validate it, and there are a lot of metrics which can we use. And yes, then again, even with fluid interface, Java is kind of verbose, but I just highlight that you can write cross validation. For instance, you can set an amount of faults, you can choose a metric, and etc. And then you can save your model. Maybe it's not necessary, but it's can be quite handy in the next few slides. Look, obviously, when we have a model, we can just run predict, and here you go, we have an answer. But if our model already saved, we can use it not only from our Java code, but actually from MySQL, from SQL code as well. So it means like the user of your model, not necessary to be able programming. For instance, it can be a business analyst that run some kind of SQL and can use your model and can predict something. And that's not all. Actually, you can not only train your model with your data, but probably you already have some framework and you can just parse a model from popular frameworks like Spark or XGBoost. So probably we want to migrate from Spark to Ignite, for instance, and you already have models, so we can deserialize how Ignite can read it, and here you go, you have the model. So to sum up, how we can get model. As I said before, we can just parse models that we got from any other popular framework, or we can load previously saved model, or obviously we can train our model by ourselves with our data. And as I already mentioned before, we can use it in SQL on our Java code. But now let's come back with our previous slide. The very first slide, what to do. Yes, we can learn or we can load our model, but what to do when one more piece of data has arrived. And Ignite gives you this feature to get a new model just by updating the old one. So each trainer, our machine learning library, has so-called update method. You can just put the old model, new data, and here you go. You can constantly update your model. So it's kind of first step to online learning. So basically, each model or each preprocessor has their own example. So you can go open examples and copy paste and to use it, I think, just use it. So that's why I think that's all from my side. I'm not going to show you code because you can look it by yourself. And thank you.
Thank you, Ravil. So do we have any questions about machine learning in Ignite? It's a rare chance, I would say, to ask a contributor, what do we have here in Ignite? So feel free to unmute and ask.
I hope that everybody went to examples and tutorials because there are a lot of good examples.
Yes, happily we have them. By the way, in that case, just we have examples on various models. So do you check out the examples? Did we try something? And do you read tutorials, for example? Or you just go and ask on Stack Overflow or something? Just want to check if it's valuable.
I'm sorry, I've never checked examples before, but I've got a question. How actually ML model look like? I mean, is it a zip file? You mentioned you can load it into Apache Ignite. Is it compressed somehow? Is it compact or not?
I think I wasn't correct when I said, I mean, you can load your model and the model itself is just a Java class with some kind of parameters. Basically, that's it. So the model itself, it's kind of the small piece of code that you can easily serialize or deserialize. But the Apache Ignite, the Apache machine learning model itself, it's just a sub-model, sub-Maven model in Apache Ignite, and I think it's delivered together with the Ignite itself.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. I mean, trained model, ML model, not a part of the code, but actual parameters, for example, for neural network or maybe some other algorithm. Somewhere you train that model, somewhere you test it, and later you deploy it to production. You can set up release cycle. What exactly you will transfer between all these stages?
That's a good question, and I'm not even sure that I can answer you right now. I think I can give you a hint, like I believe that we save our models in our Ignite clusters. That's why what exactly will be transferred, I expect it will be just a Java code, but I might be wrong. Probably it's better to, well, I think going to and read implementation, it's a bit hard. Probably it's worth to ask on a dev list or somewhere else. But probably, actually, I have a good question to our Ignite communities. And how do we exactly transfer a code from one cluster, from one node to another one? So I think it can be related.
Well, if you're talking about the classes, then you just send the bytecode of the class to another node.
Okay, because I believe that it should be just the same with Apache Ignite model, because a model is just a Java class and you just can send a bytecode.
Okay, if we don't have any more machine learning questions.
This is Colin. I had one quick question. I didn't go through all the examples, so maybe it's already there. Do you have examples for other models like Python Notebook or TensorFlow or things like that, or is only Java in the examples?
Well, in the examples, it's only Java because well, I know that there are some connectors to Ignite with Python and some other languages, but I think models are available only from Java, or it was a question like with which popular framework on other languages Ignite has interops.
Kind of more on the first one on the example, because like I'm pretty sure. I mean, I'm new, but from what I understand so far,
Okay.
is that we support a lot of frameworks. I was curious if we had an example, like if I wanted to, you know, create a little Iron Python notebook or something and deploy it, could I do that?
I'm not sure that you can create a Python notebook and deploy that. Or it depends on which framework exactly in your IPython notebook you will use. For instance, if we were talking about kind of scikit-learn, we can't parse scikit-learn models yet. But if you want to, so in this case, if you want to use an Ignite machine learning, you have just let's say go to examples, copy paste Java code and run it, and basically that's it. Or I'm not sure that again that I've got your question right.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good start. I was just curious, like, because I wanted to see if I could try something besides Java. And like I said, I haven't gone through all the examples. Maybe it's already there and I just didn't find it yet. But that's what I was curious. If you had like an example, like a tutorial, hey, if you have a Python notebook, here's how you could deploy it to your cluster and run it. Or if you had a TensorFlow.
Well, I can say that you can go, if you, by the way, do you see the code on my screen or it's still slides?
I just see the slide, how to start.
Okay. Anyway, let not play with Zoom and his rights to share the screen itself. If you go to examples, and if you go to this exact tutorial, ml.tutorial package, there will be a lot of classes like a step 1, step 2, step 3, how to use Ignite in Java, and how to learn starting from this simple like just how to load model and use the simplest decision tree classifier trainer, and then it ends with how to build your own ensembles by using Apache Ignite implement algorithms.
Okay, thank you. I'll check it out and then I'll get back if I have more questions.
Okay, and so yes, I only now I realized that I didn't leave any of my contacts, but anyway, feel free just write to dev list, for instance, and there are quite helpful machine learning community.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other machine learning questions?
And I'm intentionally still sharing this my screen because there is a GitHub link and the most interesting package and Apache Ignite website.
Yeah.
Instead of saying thank you.
You can send me your slides and I'll put the links in the video description because we are recording the video.
Yes, sure.
So, if we don't have any ML questions, in that case, let's get back to our book raffle slide. And do you have any questions you want our experts to answer? Maybe something in your case not connected with machine learning or communication or life hacks of using the system views. Please feel free to unmute and ask. And I, by the way, have a question for our user community members. Are you subscribed only to user list or you're also reading the dev list? That's really interesting thing. Please type me in a chat.
if I can ask regarding this topic, but probably it's from a bit different side, is there a kind of maybe like Ignite newsletters or monthly bulletins in a user list, for example, when you can just get a fresh updates of what was happened for a certain period of
about the
time?
newsletter, doing that once a month. Still not sending it yet, but yes, we've been thinking about that. Not to do a lot of announcements, but send one and only email with all the events and all the interesting links, because you know that we don't have at the moment the blog section, for example, on Ignite website, because it was too hard to update with all the new postings. But we can mention some interesting blog posts in the newsletter. Yes. So at the moment, I think that you can subscribe to our Twitter and to dev list. Yes, but yeah, we've been thinking about the newsletter, and that's also the question to the community: if you read such newsletters, what do you think about them in your mailbox? And we want our Twitter to be not a newsstand, but something more interesting to read. So all the news had to go somewhere. I think probably into a newsletter.
And by the way, speaking about official news channel or announcement, Apache has just one official mandatory channel for letting the community know about release. It is named announce at apache.org, and all releases in the Apache projects should be there. So if you are interested in features that will appear and at the next release, you can check announcement, and later you can check release notes. The only one issue there, it is usually tons of information there.
We can't wait to see ours actually there. Hope next week we are going 2.9. By the way, another one question, if you'd like to unmute and share, how fast do you implement the new version of Apache Ignite? How fast do you update? Do you wait for the, I don't know, next version, like will you wait to 2.9.1, for example, with more fixes? Or even maybe you'll wait for 2.9.2, or you just upgrade it immediately? You can type or unmute. What would you prefer? One version behind, you mean but now at the moment you are at 2.8, and that's pretty wise, of course. What else would you like to ask? So we have here PMC chair, we have here Apache Ignite release manager of our next release. We do have here a developer who's in charge of our clients, Fin clients and Fig clients, I mean. Who else is here? You would like to maybe ask something? And our dear speakers, of course. So please feel free to ask.
Yeah, if you had any random issues which bother you, you can just ask them right away.
What is the roadmap to Apache Ignite 3.0? You see that at the moment we've just started, and we have like a very brief, very bird view plan. There was actually the big presentation about that in English one and in Russian. You can find that on our YouTube channel. And at the moment, new features are not fixed. They are in a process of deciding, discussing. Yeah, thank you, Pavel. That's our wiki page, where it's kind of draft of a plan you can find.
Yeah, to put it simple, I think the 3.0 isn't going to include a lot of new features, but instead we are going to rework, legacy or problematic areas and work on internal structure. This is how I understand it right now. And you can see some of the details on the wiki page.
Yeah, it should become more clear and just better. And if I can say that, more beautiful.
More user-friendly.
Yes.
But please don't consider roadmap as a kind of commitment from the community, because in open source things are constantly changing. One who would like to implement something can later left the community by whatever reason he or she have. So it's kind of direction, it's kind of plans, not a commitment.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, guys. How hard will be the switch to the 3.0 for developers?
You can certainly expect some breaking changes. I think it's inevitable, but it's too early to say exactly how hard it is going to be.
But I'm sure that we can somehow prepare to that, prepare some useful tips.
Yeah, of course, we are going to have a migration guide that is going to specify each particular change that you need to make to your code to migrate. Of course, we need to think about the migration. We are not going to say, yeah, rewrite everything that you have. Yeah, don't worry, it's not going to break everything, but of course, a major version with a lot of rework underneath is going to have something.
But we will have time for that.
Yeah. I found the link to the wish list, but I'm not sure if we should paste it here.
I think it's really a wish list. It got all the features anyone wanted for a very long time. When the next major release was really, really far away, so it was like someday. But now when it has a plan, I think we should keep with the draft plan. So shall we do a book raffle already? Did everyone who wanted to fill out the survey about using open source did that? Or shall I wait a bit? Or I can use our magical random winner button already. What do you think? So in that case, let's do the raffle. So our first winner is Sergei Stranchinsky. What book would you like? Do you have Sergei here?
Hi, I'm here. Sorry, I little bit missed. Is any book already taken?
No.
Then I think I will go with the design and data intensive application one.
Yeah, well, but that's our favorite classic. I'll contact you by email about your address. Next is Al Citybro, if I'm correct. I hope I didn't misspell it. Al, United Kingdom. Are you here? Okay, looks like he left us already. Okay, I'll write him an email. And the last one is Dennis Dijak, if I'm correct with your second name. If I'm not, please excuse me. So Dennis, which book would you like? Distributed systems or database internals? What would you prefer? Okay. I hope you like that book. By the way, if someone have read recently a good book about distributed systems and databases, you can share with me the title, and I'll make our next raffles more intriguing. Dennis, I'll email you after the event. Thank you. So, any questions, suggestions, or stories to share? Please feel free to unmute yourself or type in a chat. If you need to share, I don't know, logs maybe.
The only question I have for now, it is about how things are going in the if 2.9. Probably it is direct question to release manager.
Yeah.
I guess it should be out now.
Do you mean it is
on? Not? Alexei, if
basically you can just grab the RC4 artifact and use it right away, since it have just stopped the vote successfully. The vote passed, so you can just grab the RC4 artifact, and this is exactly what is the Apache Ignite.
Oh, hooray, guys! Alexei is writing that he doesn't have a microphone, but the vote is finished and he's preparing the release. So it's really a good evening today for those who have.
Yeah, good to know. Thank you.
You can find the reference to the artifact of RC4 on the dev list if you are dying to try it as fast as possible.
Okay, that's really good news to finalize the event. Please let me know if maybe next time you'd prefer to do that in, I don't know, Slack maybe by text, if it's more comfortable for you, or you're just pretty okay with the user list and answers as we have it now, and waiting for some interesting cases and tech talks, not questions and answers. Please let me know. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your questions. Thanks to our speakers for their talks. And see you soon. Our next event will be the Leaf Coding session in November, on November 17th, if I'm not mistaken. You can check in our meetup group. One moment, please. And I'll share here the link, because that could be really fun. That would be like 2-hour event. Then Denis Magda and Val Kulichenko will try to show how the naive distributed system in Java is written. So you can join here and have fun with them in November. So thanks a lot, and have a good evening if you have evening in your time zone, and have a good day if you have a day. Thanks a lot, and bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.